All right, all right, all right, all right. Just getting things set up, folks, if anyone's actually paying attention. So give me a second. All right. How's it going, Reaper? Cassie, Akio, Fermion? Dude, where's my car? Oh yes, if it was a roadster, they stole it. It's in pieces. How's it going, Crisis? Moondoggy? Wow, people are filing in just to hear me read something. I'm flattered. All right, I will be getting started soon. Give me just a second, guys. I'm just loading it up. All right. How's it going, Darkside? Welcome back. How's it going, Clausen? Oh, Fermion, I feel you so much right now. I pulled a muscle in my lower back and it's pinching on my sciatic nerve. It sucks so fucking much. I have never been in this much pain in my life. Okay, so you guys have some choices. I can read chapter 1 of Wanted Dead or Alive, The Proper Villains, or I can read chapters 3 and 4 of Lo-Fi's fanfic, or I can read the radio play that we have going on that we're going to try and edit into an actual radio play. So, one for Wanted Dead or Alive, two for the fan fiction, or three for the radio play. No, there's going to be no Antwon stripping. All right, so you guys want to break me first by having me read Lo-Fi's fan fiction. All right, I see how it is. You don't want anything. You don't want anything to do with the thing that I labored so hard for. It's fine. It's fine. Lo-Fi, in Discord, can you send me your radio play again? I cannot find it, and I want to be able to read it. Oh yes, stripping is for the Patreon only hangout, and if you need a minimum of $25 to be in that one, $25 a month. I am not reading 50 Shades of Grey. I don't care. All right. Oh, I'll take $100. I'll take $100 not to strip. I don't know if anyone would actually pay for that though. Okay, so we will start with Lo-Fi's fan fiction. Oh god. Oh god, this is gonna be bad. Okay, are you all ready? Hardwood. Is Lo-Fi in the chat? I want to make sure she's here. She is not. Well, that makes me sad. Hold on just a second, guys. Thank you, Akio. I'm sure she'll join when she can. There she is. Okay. Lo-Fi, I need you to send me the radio thing again. I have no idea where it is. I saved it somewhere. I put it somewhere. I don't know where it went. All right. Oh god. Just to let you all know, Lo-Fi just finished this about a half hour ago. Kelpie was on the way. Oh, sorry. Chapter 3, Hardwood Deep Rooting. Kelpie was on the way, skipping along, singing her song, buttocks delightfully bouncing up and down, up and down, up and down. I know it. I know who to get, she said out loud, squeezing her nipples between her grabby sausages. In other words, known as fingers. Cassie, it must be her, for she is awesome and, well, to be frank, I just like the wording of co-pilot Cass. She continued saying to no one in particular. Kelpie bounced her beautiful bosomed body towards the forest of no returns, without valid receipt. What a stupid name. For Cass was a druid, and she had her ways with wood that, in all honesty, as of lately, after her whole hetero magic thing, seemed extremely intriguing to Kelpie. Um, the second she spotted the woods, Kelpie had to stop for drool. Stop to drool was free flowing from her mouth, another mouth which, while being less usable for receiving nutrients, had seen its fair share of oblong eatable items. She wiped the drool from her lip and scratched her triangle of power, and yeasting was bad due to last night's carrot incident, but alas, she pressed on. Triangle of power, that's all right. She entered the woods of no returns without valid receipt, and instantly got transfixed by the sounds that hit her. Creaking wood, rubbing up and down against each other, producing an excess of creamy, sticky goo. It's getting a little gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that, just saying. Little dick heavy right here, so I'll skip the detailed explanation of cock trees. Kelpie was instantly on her knees, screaming in pain. No, wait, pleasure. Grabbing her tube of happiness. No, wait, it says rubbing. I'm just going to skip this part. It gets a little graphic. Sounds of turning pages. 13 pages of detailed masturbatory scenes. Jesus Christ. Oh, yeah, here we are finally. I'm reading it. That's exactly what it says. It says sounds of turning pages, 13 pages of detailed masturbatory scenes. Jesus Christ. I'm reading it exactly as it's supposed to be. Cass ran from the forest towards the now exhausted and destroyed pile of meat that was Kelpie's ragged form. Kelpie, do you require help? What are you? Oh, she said, stopping and stepping back a little. Sorry to disturb you. I'll just be on my way to my home. Yeah, I have business to attend to. She continued backing up slowly, but never taking her eyes away from the deep rooting going on with that branch and this part of Kelpie that was, well, not supposed to intermix. Cass, please, it's hetero magic. I can't help it. Carry me away from this cursed place of no returns without valid receipt, or I shall indeed spear myself to death in the most pleasurable yet. I don't know why I'm complaining. Please just help, Kelpie said. Oh, okay, I see. Hetero magic. Sure, Cass said, squinting in disbelief at Kelpie's broken form. Let me get Snuggins, the bunny, to carry you to my hut. Snuggins, the bunny? Really? How do I read this more dramatically? With a flurry of rhyming words and a dance unlike any other, that went something like this. Oh, God damn it. Samando Spaden. I can't fucking read these. Spedinki, I celebrate Pushkinki. Spatato Spumuli, it's a bunny, not a crocodilo. Enema salad dressing. Because I'm sure she is laughing her ass off. You know now with whom you are messing. Eat me out and throw me away. It's normal in our culture to act quite gay. I, Lo-fi. That I, I don't know what to do with that. Uh, hmm. You know what? We're gonna go. We're going to power through. We're going to power through. That's what we're going to do. The dance consisted of grabbing her just stunningly large breasts and bouncing them up and down, slapping herself in the face multiple times, not caring this is what was required to get the assistance of Snuggins the bunny. With a loud crash and a whirl followed by a boom, something massive hit the ground from the sky. It was Snuggins the bunny, in its rotund, scaly glory. Kelpie looked up. That's not a bunny, she said. Cass replied, Shh. Now, don't tell him his name was was originally Brockholm, and he was a Greg of the clan Steve, but he hit his head and now he can fly. He thinks he's a bunny. Kelpie sighed and looked up. Whatever, just get him to carry me, you hut. Oh, God. Chapter that At least the chapters are short. Chapter 4, the correct fellatio. All right. It was not long after Kelpie was relaxing in Cass's scarily pink home, Snuggins the bunny having left shortly after. It helped that this was pink. Nothing turned Kelpie on. Well, maybe a tinge when she looked at Cass, but that was normal. There was something about her that. Great, it's turning lesbian now. Move on. Oh, Kelpie, what brings you to my domain of wood? Cass asked. Oh, you see, Cass, I need a crew, for I was hit with heteromagic and I crave caucus. So I have been tasked to leave on a terraformer, and I need a crew of 4 besides me, or 5, I don't quite remember. I can't be asked to look it up in the prior chapter to correct myself. 4 or 5 crew members, so I can spread the word of the Axions. Kelpie replied. Oh, God. Oh, and what does that have to do with me? Cass asked, her nipples perking up in anticipation of the answer. Oh, you were the first person I thought of, cause Kelpie replied, stealing a glance at Cass's ginormous boobs that seemed to have grown since the last time we mentioned them a couple of lines above. Oh my god. Oh, you are the best doctor in the village, and it has been foretold that we are to get a lot of sexually transmitted disease. Disney's. It says Disney's. I'm going to read it as Disney's. Sexually transmitted Disney's at this new planet because of how much rocket juice our abyss flanges shall swallow. What the fuck, Lo-Fi? Abyss flanges. All right, that's a new one on me. I've never heard them called that before. Sorry, dark side. Kelpie licked her soft, glistening, meaty, without getting too big lips, just perfect for swallowing objects up to 8 inches with a girth of approximately 3. Oh, Cass said, are we really doing this? Oh, in front of every new sentence? God damn it, I hope you pay me well for this shit. Oh, God fucking damn it. Oh well. Oh, indeed, oh. I see what made you think of me besides the whole doctor thing, Cass said. Uh, oh, I have a nagging feeling you are one of the girls here that, besides me, might not be the lawfully required amount of queer, which is 100%. The statistics have shown, and you do live in a forest of sexy wood, and you have a male slave that does your whim when you show him your milk squirters, Kilby said. Yes, apparently. No problem, Idle. Oh, I see. Oh, indeed. I can't deny that I on occasion have a romp with a bad dragon product, handmade dildos of your favorite fantasy beast or animal, ranging from horse cock to demigorgon member, as made popular by the hit series Stranger Things on Netflix. Season 3 has been confirmed. Please sponsor our stream, Bad Dragon. Cass said, while looking into approximately the area where the narrator would be if he was indeed narrating this, or a camera for a feature length movie, or television series based on the stories of Kelpie the Depraved. All the while, she was lining up just massive toys of every animal and monster known to man, with questionable amounts of white sticky goo lube that made it all the more fun to play with. Oh my god. That's it. I'm quitting. This is the worst thing I've ever narrated. I don't care. Give me my pay. I'm out. I'm out. Fuck this shit. No, don't leave, Lo-Fi yelled out loud at the narrator leaving the recording room. I'll pay double. No, I don't care. It's beneath me. Do you know who I am? The narrator yelled out at Lo-Fi in heated anger. Yes, I do. I'm so sorry. Lo-Fi said, falling to her knees crying. You could at least get to the part where the right fellatio was explained. Find another narrator, the narrator said, leaving the recording studio and slamming the door behind him. I wish I could actually use sound effects. Lo-Fi was distraught, but she was a strong, independent female. So she gathered herself and went out of the room. It was time for a lot of blood. Chapter 5 preview: The hunt for a new narrator, narrated by another narrator. Oh god. All right, and that's all that we have for now for Lo-Fi's fan fiction. It was so bad that it made the narrator quit. Oh god. All right. So, oh, you no, you didn't transcend the fourth wall. You destroyed it with 16 pounds of C4 and a nuclear bomb just in case. Okay, now two things left. Type 1 in the chat if you want to hear chapter 1 of the prop of Wanted Dead or Alive, or chapter 2, or press 2 if you want to hear the radio play that we are going to flush out. Reaper, do you actually have a car like that? Okay. Five. What five for? I don't even know what four is for. I wish I had a car like that too. Oh, did they really? Oh, well. Goddamn. I don't want a waste of a vehicle. 6. You're not making it any better. No, no, there will be no stripping of Antwon. 5 is not to strip. Oh, well, is 5 sexually stripping or not to strip? I don't. And then what is 6? It, they could have given me the red Tesla Roadster. I would have been perfectly happy. Okay. So I'm going to read Wanted Dead or Alive. Now, I want you all to know it's been a while. I know about SpaceX. Um, it's been a while since I've written anything, so um, please be gentle. Now, I have to explain that there is a lot of dialogue in this first chapter because I wanted it to be explained uh, through the eyes of someone who is actually in the world. So, okay. Wanted Dead or Alive, the proper villains. Chapter 1. Can you state your name for the record, please? Detective John Orville, former lead detective for San Angeles Police Department, formerly Los Angeles Police Department. An older gentleman sat down at the silver table in the interrogation room. His soft southern accent filled the still air. It was the same one the department had used to question other criminals for years, and now he was there. John was tired, but he was old, so the two kind of went hand in hand. He was pushing 50, and his waistline surely showed it. His eyes still sparkled blue, and his silver hair was combed neatly, trying to hide a bald spot that was rapidly growing at the back of his head. And do you know why you're here, sir? A very nondescript agent was already waiting at the table. They all looked the same, no actual features to tell one from the other. It was supposed to be this way. The only thing that differentiated them were their bar-coded badges that listed the pronouns that they were to be addressed by. No, but I have a good idea. It's about time you IDL boys looked into this. The agent flinched a bit. It was slight, but John caught it. Sorry, IDL folks. I don't need another write-up for microaggression infractions. The Agent Bex, gave a curt smile and then placed a manila folder on the table. The word classified was stamped in bright red across it. John looked down and sighed. He knew what it meant, and this little meeting made even more sense now. Please start at the beginning, Agent Bex said, motioning to the folder. The beginning? All right. It starts in 1990. No, the beginning of the case. Agent Bex cut John off. Yeah, and for me to do that, we got to talk about 1990. I mean, that's when all of this really started. Do you want to hear this or not? Agent Beck's lips tightened. But they relented with a slight nod. All right. Like I said, it was 1990, and the internet was just something that the military was using to communicate with each other. That was until someone got the bright idea to package it up and make it family friendly. And bam! The World Wide Web was born. Now, we got to jump from there to 1995. You see, in 1995, the internet was the wild, wild west. You could find anything, you could say anything, and you could pretty much do anything you wanted. Around this time, we started to see what we now call black hats and white hats starting to emerge. Now, around the time things started getting serious in cyberspace, there was a group of black hats that gathered up a bunch of information. They found something on the president at the time and even the director of the FBI. So that's when you folks were formed. The IDL, the Internet Defense League. You boys started cracking down on cybercrimes, and soon enough you found all those black hats and scrubbed them from the internet. I don't know what they had on former President Clinton and Director Mueller, but it must have been mighty important. John reached into his pocket and pulled out a small crumpled pack of cigarettes. He offered one to Agent X, who shook their head quickly. Detective Orville then placed it to his lips and sat forward. He opened the folder and spread out a few of the documents. Whatever information they had was enough to put the fear of God into the whole down lot of them, because they gave you folks carte blanche to enact any kind of laws you needed to protect the people from evils of the internet. And you boys sure went crazy. Agent Bex visibly flinched again. John saw it, but again chose to ignore it. This time he continued. First went saying whatever you wanted in comment sections of articles or videos. Then things deemed too offensive got wiped clean. And finally, the lockdown of extreme political ideas. Now, it all came down to who was really in charge to determine what was good and bad. But let's just say it was more of a conservative mindset that y'all made sure got the axe. But there were good things too in that time. Cyberspace got bigger, faster connection speeds, advancement in technology, and a space where you could feel secure in the fact that no one would scream or holler at you. People got smarter, well, in ways of maneuvering through the internet. This did split the web, though. We now had a place where the black hats went to hide, and you IDL were always searching for ways in and trying to track them. The dark web was formed, or deep web, whatever you prefer. Both are technically right. Now, these places, they were still the wild, wild west. So the moniker Black Hat was fitting. You could buy whatever you wanted in these places for the right price. Guns, drugs, people, children. It meant it wasn't a safe haven in the least. But the black hats thrive just like in the other half. Now, white hats are what y'all call innocents now. People who live their lives following the rules, not straying too far outside what y'all have declared as law. Black hats, of course, are anyone who doesn't, making things simple. Anyway, that's how things were back then. John pulled out a picture of a young girl no more than 20. She had blonde hair and a bright smile. John's lips pursed together, causing the unlit cigarette to push upward. And then 1996 happened. This little white hat girl, he pushed the picture towards the agent. She was too smart for her own good. She got accepted into to a really good school, one of those new tech schools that started popping up everywhere, promising all sorts of things. She had her whole thesis already planned out from day one. Like I said, too smart for her own good. She was going to document her journey through the darkest parts of cyberspace. She wanted to see how deep things actually went. So this little white-haired girl, she dives in feet first, not having a slightest care in the world for what she might find. Well, she went deep, breaking through firewalls, passing through hidden sites. She went as far as one could go. And on a rather busy night, that white-hat girl, she passed out at her computer. When she woke up, staring her in the face was a sentence in DDoS. It simply said, execute a protocol, yes or no. How do you know all this? Agent Bex interrupted. It's like I said. She was documenting everything. It was in reams of journals, each breach in a firewall, each hack, each move she made up until that protocol showed up. She documented everything. Now, you going to let me finish, or do I go smoke this cigarette now? Go on, the agent said quizzically. So, as she documented, that little white-haired girl, she made a choice, and we believe it was the last choice she ever made, because the journal entries stops after she says she's going to hit yes. So the saying goes, curiosity killed the cat. In this case, curiosity sent her flying across the room with a jolt of electricity. Or so we believe. See, she didn't write anything else after that. But the one thing we do know is that the enter key on her keyboard was melted. We found her 6 months later in some rundown hovel of a hotel on what used to be Skid Row. She was in the same dress she had worn that day, and well, she had killed someone. Now, you may be too young to remember this case, but it was the first case of one of the IDL being killed. She had cut off their hands at the wrist, pulled all of the teeth out, and smashed the agent's face to the point they couldn't be recognized. It took weeks of detective work and reconstruction of the skull to figure out who it was. John shifted through the papers and his hand stopped over an image of an old Hewlett Packard. His fingers twitched as he grabbed it up quickly. The cigarette pressed between his lips quivered slightly. The best we can tell, that jolt crossed some wires in her brain. All she says now is two things. Wait, she's alive? The IDL agent looked shocked. Hmm? Oh, yeah. Sorry if I gave you the impression that she's no longer with us, but she is alive and well. She was not the victim of Antwon. How's it going, Ted? Well as she can be with being in a catatonic state and all. She only mumbles two things now, one being, you are not prepared, the other being, he's coming. That you are not prepared thing was scrawled all over the room we found her in. She'd used the IDL agent's blood as paint and their hands as a gruesome paintbrush. I thought I would spare you those details, but this computer was a real brain burner. Sorry, Tish. Like I said, we found her 6 months after all this happened. By all accounts of her journal, and her dorm sure as hell showed it, dust was everywhere, and since she had paid up for the year of school, no one had even tried to enter it. Now, back then, if you didn't pay your electric bill after the second missed payment, they would shut you off. The place hadn't had power for a good 4 months. The place smelled stale and moldy. Nothing was working. Even the water had been shut off. But this damn thing, Detective Orville tossed the picture at the IDL agent. That damn thing was still working. Hold on a second, guys. I think I'm just letting them in. All right, that damn thing was still working. No one could explain it. On the screen in blood red letters, it stated, "You are not prepared." Just like she had scrawled all over the damn place. We even unplugged the thing and it was still going. We had techs look at it and they couldn't find any internal battery or anything that would make the thing still work after 4 months of no power. So, since the case was pretty much open and shut, it got put in evidence lockup. Now, here's the funny thing about that Hewlett Packard. The guy over in evidence lockup, he noticed something about it. It took a few months, but he started to see the color fade. He figured whatever was powering it was finally dying. But after about a week or so, he saw the color start to brighten again. He told me it was like a pulse. He watched it for a while, and each time he was near the damn computer, he got the feeling it was watching him. All right, have a good one, Tish. Now, here's the thing that's really going to bake your noodle. That little white hat girl, she got seen by a ton of doctors. By my count, she's been seen by a total of 10 over the years. So this newest doctor, with all of his new cybernetic enhancements and shiny new diploma, he gets an idea. Something none of the other doctors had ever tried, by my account. Almost 20 years to the day. Evidence lockups. Evidence lockup gets a call. The doctor is requesting the computer. Now it's 2016, and we've already been through the new wave of technology, right? So evidence sees no reason not to let the doctor have this old thing. All right, Tish. It's been collecting dust. Damn thing's still on, though. The color has been changing faster and faster up until this point, like a heartbeat. John reached into his pocket and pulls out a lighter. Agent Bex cleared their throat and pointed to the no smoking sign. The detective lighted the cigarette anyway. Trust me, when I'm done, you're gonna want one. So what happened at the hospital, Detective Orville? Agent Bex asked, more than a little annoyed, while waving away the smoke. Yeah, well, that doctor set up the computer in that white hat's room and showed it to her. Words and all. You want to know what happened? Tell me, Detective. Now, first let me say this. First, let me say this. That jolt from the computer did something to her. She was so focused on going as deep into the dark web as she could that she had blinders on. That jolt crossed some wires in her brain. I believe that it pushed everything she drove past to the forefront of her mind. It's all she can see now. All the evil of the internet. Sad, really, if you ask me. Can you get to what happened, Detective? The last word made it clear that the agent's patience was running thin. Well, that little emaciated, catatonic, completely gone girl took out 4 orderlies before she was stopped. Felt bad for that doctor, too. All his fancy new cybernetics. She ripped them right out of his damned head. Even went after the new eye he had put in. It was a good thing none of that was connected to anything important, right? John laughed a little, then took a deep drag on his cigarette. 4 orderlies dead, one doctor in a vegetative state, and that little girl fell right back into her catatonic state as if nothing ever happened. But one thing did change. She wasn't speaking only 2 phrases anymore, just one. He's here. Who? What? John asked, confused. Who's he? Who was he? Oh, yeah. Well, that's the best part. That damn computer got put back in evidence lockup. That meant it was now our problem again. The officer that was there that night swears to this day on the graves of his unborn children that what he saw really happened. But wouldn't you know it, the security cameras stopped working at around the time he says the thing that happened. He says that the red letters changed, not into a new phrase or dull like it had done so many times before. No, he says they shifted and molded into 2 round discs, eyes. He said that the screen cracked below the eyes and formed into a smile too long for a human, and the teeth it showed were sharp, like a shark's mouth, just a row of chompers made to tear things apart. Next thing this guy knows is that he sees fingers push through the glass as if it were water. First one hand, then a second, and then whatever it was pulled itself completely out of the computer screen. He says it stood up, looked right at him through the cameras. Its skin was black. And I don't mean POC black, like African American black. No, he says pitch black. The feeling he got staring at those 2 red eyes were as if all of the darkness of the deep web had just taken form. It grabbed a red hoodie from evidence and grabbed the handle. Then it was gone. John waited for any reaction from the IDL agent, and he saw a shiver go through Agent Beck's body from shoulder to their toes. The agent knew what he was talking about. Now, this was something like 10 years ago. No one has heard from this thing since, by my recollection. But something interesting has been happening, hasn't it? What do you mean, detective? You know what I mean. That saying. It's been popping up everywhere. Give me a second. Sorry about that. Still at work. You know what I mean. That saying. It's been popping up everywhere. You are not prepared. It's been at hundreds of crime scenes all over the country, not just here. You know what that thing is, or you think you have a good idea, but you don't know everything. That's why you're here talking to the defunct detective, the detective that was hunting a ghost, right? John was getting agitated at the cool demeanor of the IDL agent, and it was causing him to get flustered. But it isn't just the saying, is it? That has become a rallying cry for the Black Hats now. You know it. They've been breaking protocols and laws left and right. 2 years ago, they held a free speech rally. The last free speech rally was held in 1999. You're getting more calls because of microaggression violations, pronouns being refused. I've seen it. We all have. And on top of that, you are here for information on the others. The others? Agent Bex raised an eyebrow. They were unsure how the detective had figured all this out, or that there were others. This one. John picked up a picture of a blurry image of a dark-haired woman from behind. He threw it at the agent and let it slide in front of them. Age, unknown. Race, unknown. Location, unknown. Eye color, unknown. Hell, we're not even sure if they are a woman. Alias is Lo-Fi. She's been connected to murder, breaking and entering, kidnapping, and a slew of other crimes. I have a file cabinet in the back that has a whole drawer filled with cases connected to her. They call her Lo-Fi because they believe that's how she maneuvers on detective. Low frequency, old tech, outdated cybernetics and equipment. No one's ever seen her long enough to even get a clear picture. John slid 4 other images of 4 separate women towards Agent Bex, and each one looked completely different. Hell, each of these women could be her. No one knows. But that phrase, that is her calling card. That is its calling card. How did you? I know about them all. Detective Orville cut them off. I know about the so-called cyber terrorist you're looking for. That the Asperian breach way back in 2017, the one that stole credit information from millions of people. They bragged that they could never be hacked. That their firewall and defenses were impenetrable. I know that firewall was manipulated after it happened with that damn phrase embedded in it. That wasn't shared with the news, the public, or even low-level IDL members. Only white hat brass is supposed to know this, right? Zellstrike, one of the worst black hats that have ever graced cyberspace. I have another drawer filled with cyber crimes attached to them. The bank that spit out millions of credits back to random members. Zell, the power grid that got shut down and held for ransom for the first issuance of all Penthouse magazines. Zell, or what about the Super Bowl feed a couple of years ago? The big screen got taken over and showed hardcore interracial Nazi porn. That was Zell Strike 2. John had to stop himself from laughing at the last part. He and most of the squad room laughed pretty hard for weeks after that. Detective Orville saw Agent Beck's blush, and he calmed down. He had to remember that even though they were IDL, they were still human. At least most of them were. So then you know about the Berserker? Agent Beck swallowed softly. The detective was a font of information, more than the IDL had expected. The Orkkin? Yes. It was an interesting tale. About 7 years ago, we had that influx of otherkin. The IDL made them an identity and a pronoun, and soon after people were getting elf ears, tails, wings, and whatever else the cybernetic surgeons would apply. That poor boy believed he was an orc, and the girl he was with at the time didn't help. But what someone does in their personal life ain't my business. He decided to get the full treatment. Before you all at the IDL made the other kin surgeries government funded, he paid out of pocket for everything. Increased strength, increased speed, increased size, skin discoloration, tusk implants, cybernetic eyes, flattened nose, everything. While he was finishing his last surgery for the increased strength, there was a power surge. Now, people were told that this was a power line that got severed because of construction. I know that it was targeted. I know whose calling card was left behind. The cameras show the berserker Brockus in the chair. When the lights go out, and when they come back on, the orc is gone. Now, I also know from that report he couldn't have walked out under his own power. He had to be carried or helped out. I also know that "you are not prepared" was etched into the camera lens. Detective, how do you know? Because I lost my career trying to find these people. A week after Brockus went missing, there was a television studio ransacked. Thousands of credits worth of equipment was stolen. Things weighing well over a ton went missing in the 20 minutes it took the police to arrive. That is impossible. Unless you have enhancements, he's been connected to violence all over the country. You obviously know more than we thought. Yeah, well, maybe you should have come and talked to me first. I gave my career for these freaks. I told you IDL jokes about Antwon before. John sat back and put his cigarette out on the table. Antwon? Agent Bexax asked, confused. The red-eyed thing that crawled out of the computer screen. Yeah, A protocol. He calls himself Antwon. They have a following. The Black Hats see them as heroes. They cause mischief and damage wherever they go. And what is worse is you all have been trying to find them without even knowing it. You know about the pirate webcasts? Yes, that's them. They're flaunting it in your faces. His voice is powerful. When Antwon speaks, people listen. They're calling them the villains. The what? The proper villains. This is the name of their group. The Black Hats named them. They ran with it. And do you want to know what the worst part of all of this? What would that be, Detective Orville? John took out his last cigarette and held it between his thumb and index finger and pointed to a large mirror on the wall. The one-way mirror that he knew it was. I know that there's an ideal member back there getting me my walking papers. I'm being let go today because I know more than I should. And once I get them, once I'm finished clearing out my desk and step outside, I'm going to finally meet Lo-Fi for the first time. More than likely, it'll be my last time, too. Because those fuckers. He laughed and set the cigarette down. I thought I was closing in on them. I honestly thought I was getting close. But they knew where I was the entire time. I got a letter, an honest-to-God letter, not an email, not a text, or a tweet. A postcard saying, "Sorry to hear about today. Tell the IDL everything. Going to miss you, buddy. Signed, Antwon. You are not prepared for the villains. You don't even know what's coming." John was sitting at his desk later and looked up as his lieutenant came to his desk looking upset. He knew what it was. He didn't know how Antwon knew, but he didn't care. He was glad this was going to be over. He had become a laughingstock trying to chase ghosts. After being congratulated for his service, he was offered a nice pension and full benefits. He knew he'd never get a chance to use them. John Orville gathered his stuff for the last time and took his first steps out of the station as a civilian. And as he walked down the steps, he continued to look around him for any signs of the villains. He could feel them watching him. He stopped and began to open a new pack of cigarettes. As he placed the first one to his lips, he heard a soft but sing-song voice whisper into his ear. "Those things will kill you, John. We can't have that, now can we?" Lo-Fi? John felt his throat close up. "Oh, you remembered me," she chuckled. "Can I at least take a look? I mean, I've been looking for you guys for years." He could hardly breathe. "Look up, Johnny boy, right there. We really appreciate this." John looked up and caught a glimpse of red. He saw them. Zell in his signature blue mask, Brockus in his orange hue, and Antwon, those red, piercing eyes and Cheshire Cat smile. He turned and saw Lo-Fi. She was so close he could smell something that his brain would register too late as papyrus. It won't hurt, Johnny boy, I promise." John looked into what he could see of Lo-Fi's eyes, hidden behind beautiful blonde hair and a pair of glasses that made her look so unassuming you could easily see her as a librarian. Not the cold-blooded assassin her files said she was. Green eyes, playful and bright. There was a pinch in his back and an intake of air on his part. It was uncomfortable, but he could feel his energy being drained from his fingers. His knees were weak, and he could no longer support his weight. In seconds, he fell to the ground as his life's blood drained onto the pavement. Lo-Fi was gone before he had even hit the ground. End of chapter 1. Well, well, I'm sorry you hurt your sciatic. Thank you, Fermion. Thank you, Akio. I can't continue. There's no more. I would read chapter 2, but I haven't written it yet. I'm probably going to be working on chapter 2 Wednesday night. Tuesday or Wednesday night. I don't know. I'm sorry, I have a life. This is the first time I've written anything in a very long time. The wrench henchman? Uh, Lo-Fi writes comedy gold in 2 hours. I'm actually, trying to figure out a way to write this into a novel. Thank you, Cassie. Okay, and I'm asking this honest. Any criticisms, any at all, please let me know. Lo-Fi, I'm afraid of your novel when it gets released. It sounded like a book. Yes, it's going to be a book. I know. I have to go back and this is basically the rough draft. I have to go back and fix grammar mistakes that I found while I was reading. Her book should come with a breathing apparatus from people dying of laughter. I'm almost afraid of what Gnostic would say if he was here. Probably shoot me. Okay. Well, thank you for all your wonderfully warm words. Now there is one more thing, and then I will take suggestions from you guys. So Lo-Fi got it in her head to write a scene, and she wanted to turn it into a radio play that we're all going to act out and get some sound effects and things for. So this is basically a heist scene, and it's we're going to perform it the best we can. So it's not like Lo-Fi's fan fiction. This is her trying to be serious. Sort of. Oh, that's the thing. Okay. The crimes, that's what I want to ask about. The crimes that Zell performed, does that seem like him? The bank shooting out money um, to random people, the him holding an entire grid of power for ransom for all the first issues of Penthouse magazine, and the big screen playing hardcore interracial not porn. It's super petty and it sounds like him. Okay. All right. I will move on to this radio play. Oh, the command position will be thrown in there. Don't worry. This was just so what I wanted the first chapter to be, and why I wanted it mostly dialogue, is because I wanted to be able to express how the villains are affecting the world. It's explaining the world. It's explaining what's been going on. It's in the future. It's 9 years and 8 years in the future with an altered timeline kind of thing, where cyberspace and it's cyberpunk. So um I wanted to and basically with the introduction of the IDL, I wanted people to get a grasp that basically the social justice warriors have won and have turned the world into what they want. They've got, you know, legal power behind it to create whatever rules and laws that they want on the internet that are affecting the real world as well. Yeah, kind of like that. Think like Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, stuff like that. Okay, so the fact that you say that more random, you have to remember that at the time that the crimes were happening, he's already been recruited by Antwon. So Antwon has kind of maneuvered his destructive force, his chaotic force. No, Mary Sue is actually. I plan to do something with the Mary Sue. You guys are going to like it. All right, let's get on with this radio play. Okay. Antwon paced back and forth in the lobby, gunfire sporadically peppering the wall behind him, in a slowly approaching pattern snaking towards him. Zell! He exclaimed. Are you in soon? Just a minute, he yelled back. Can't a guy get some calm and quiet to do his job? He went back to just humming. Footsteps approached behind him. With not a care in the world, Zell picked up a high-tech looking orb, twisted it in the middle, and threw it behind him. The footsteps stopped, as if confused by what Zell threw. What the? Zell heard exclaiming behind him, closely followed by a sucking noise, a scream, and what sounded like meat being thrown into a blender. Eek. Antwon tapped his foot slightly. More and more guards could be heard approaching outside the door. He turned slightly and stared at the back of a blonde-haired woman standing bent over a still living, whimpering guard sitting on the floor against the wall, covered in multiple bleeding cuts. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I wonder where my knife will go, was all he could hear, closely followed by a pained yelp and a slight giggle. Lo-fi, Antwon said. Antwon, the blonde-haired woman said, just slightly tilting her head backward to listen to his words. He knew she was always listening. She always listened to his words. He had that power over her. Lo-fi, could you get over here for a second? Antwon said, a broad smile spreading more and more across his face. Sure, just a second, Lo-fi said. There, little fella, it all ends now. She pulled out a big, oddish black book and placed it on her heart, facing the guard, her mouth moving slightly as if reading something in her head. All the while, she slowly but surely pushed the knife into the guard's throat. With a final gurgle, the guard slumped. Lo-Fi removed her book and put it back in her backpack and walked towards Antwon. Here I am to save your day, she said, throwing her arms up. She saw the smile on Antwon's face, and she knew Antwon had a plan. So, what's the plan? Lo-Fi said. Oh, well, as you can hear, he said in his smooth yet otherworldly accent. I didn't know it was otherworldly. Do you guys think it's otherworldly? There's a lot of guards on the way. A lot. And I'm here thinking that while I got deep into the system, you and Brockus take care of the guards. Zell does what Zell does best. So, where's Brockus? No, this isn't the fanfic. The fanfic was read first as per the chat. Technically, it's a fanfic, I guess. It's about the villains. Yeah, yes, but no. Oh, he is out and around, Zell answered in the background, nonchalantly typing away at his computer. A shot went close. Too close for comfort. It almost hit Antwon. Very close. Too close. He did not know what the ideal used, but it hurt, even him. Okay, time's up, guys. We need to do it now, Antwon said. Lo-Fi, get Brockus. Place him in front of Zell. Zell, keep hacking, and well, Lo-Fi, when you're done, go nuts. Can do, buddy, Zell said. Antwon turned around and walked out of the lobby to one of the smaller rooms. Okay, I'll need a couple of seconds, Lo-Fi said, pulling out a golden book. Pure golden with a shimmering, unnatural glow surrounding it. I can buy you maybe 5, Zell said, finally getting up, pulling out a strange-looking rifle and firing madly through the wall to the outside. After a good many seconds of non-stop firing. Fuck, I have to reload. Guns are just not what they used to be. This was apparently what the ideal had waited for. They stormed in the front entrance. Lo-Fi was distracted, reading. Zell was reloading on the floor again, humming a tune to himself. Zell had seen it before, but it freaked him out a bit. Lo-Fi's eyes rolled back in her head, and her hair started moving. A glow was seen around the book, spreading up her arms and would soon cover her entire body. Hands up! Put the book and the guns down, the ideal guards yelled, pointing tens, I'm assuming there's hundreds of guns at each of Zell and Lo-Fi. Where's your leader? They screamed furiously at Zell and Lo-Fi. And where's the giant? Where's Brockus? Stomping sounds caught everyone by surprise. The floor was shaking. It was getting louder, as if closer. The guards looked around slowly. Zell started laughing. Lo-Fi had turned almost completely golden. When the wall was on the right burst down, squishing a couple of the IDL members. A huge, bald, big-tusked, muscle-bound monster bounded into the room, as if there had been no wall at all. He looked at the IDL and said in his calm but deep rumbling, "You rang?" The IDL started to turn towards Brockus and started firing. "Ha ha! That caliber gun? What do you think these muscles are made of? I'm an orc." He ran forward, pushing one of the IDL and punching one of punting one of the IDL in the stomach, sending him hurtling through the room, smashing against the wall, slumping down, broken. A roar of rage, and Brockus rushed forward, grabbing them by the neck, snapping easily, and throwing them left and right. He got to the entrance, having driven the remaining IDL out, but stood in the entrance and looked out. Fuck, they brought the big guns. Zell, do you have any gadgets you can use? Brockus asked. No, man, I used them up. I used them all. Didn't think they would go this wild over such a small thing. Anyways, Antwon is in the back doing his thing, and Lo-Fi, well, I don't know what the fuck she's doing, but what she's summoning, but damn, it's taking a good while. Must be a biggie, Zell replied. Antwon poked his head out the door. Brockus, finally. Come in, man. I need some lifting done. Zell, how's it coming along? And is Lo-Fi still summoning? Aye, Brockus said. I can't do his voice, so aye, Brockus said and walked towards him. I don't know, man. She's been at it for what, a good couple of minutes, Zell said. So I'll stick around and keep an eye out. And when she is done, guess I'll have to carry her. What a hassle. Okay, good enough. I sound so nonchalant in this, Antoine said as his head disappeared into the room again with Brockus following him. Footsteps were heard. A lot. It felt like a tiny earthquake. In all sense, any normal people would have felt fear at the approaching doom. Not these people. Not a worry was thought. IDL rushed into the room, carrying everything from riot shields to regular rifles to heavy anti-tank gear, disruptor tech, and so forth. Clearly, they had done a lot of research on the villain and their individual strengths and weaknesses. But that is what made it special to the villains. They covered each other. They had each other's back. They removed the weaknesses. They had their own strengths. And then there was Lo-Fi, the other villain. The other villain still knew almost nothing about her, except that she had some old books, and on occasion she would, at huge, at on some occasion, would at huge physical and mental toll summon creatures from wherever and use her body as a vessel. She was now completely shimmering. She fell to the floor and landed on all fours, in a bestial stance. She turned her head to Zell and said in a voice not her own, deep like 1,000 people were talking at once, "Zell, you better carry me carefully. I'll be useless for a while after this." Zell noted her legs had broken backwards into a more animalistic shape, her finger bones protruding through her fingers as sharp claws. Her eyes turned solid black, her skin turned golden, and her hair growing down her back as a mane. "Oh my god, Lo-Fi, what the fuck did you summon?" Zell exclaimed. "Omet, Devourer," she said. "She talked to me. She craves the hearts of these lesser beings, lesser races." "Lesser races? That's racist. Wait a second. Oh my god, Lo-Fi, I can say nigger now." Zell clapped his hands. "Nigger, nigger, nigger." Oh god. It's my favorite line because it sounds exactly like him. I can't help it. We're going to keep it in. And I can't wait for him to say it. Lo-Fi went into a pounce, landing on the face of the first IDL guard, ripping his head in two. Zell sat up, hefting weird weapons in each hand, and started ruthlessly firing. Lo-Fi pounced from guard to guard, tearing them limb from limb. One unlucky soul even had stomach acid projectively vomited on his face. Ew. Zell, noting not much left for him to do, sat down and continued his hacking, screams and gunfire filling the background, yet he started humming again as if not a care in the world. A while passed, and Antwon and Brockus returned, Brockus hefting a giant something onto his shoulders. Antwon stopped, never losing his smile, and looked at the carnage in front of them. Well, someone's been busy. Zell, are you finished? Zell stood in command position and said, Yes, I'm finished. Oh, and she's out eating hearts of the fallen. Apparently Amut required it, or she will take Lo-Fi's soul, Zell said. Fair enough, Brockus muttered and walked off. I like that because it's kind of like, well, that's how it goes. Antwon smiled. Yes, there it is. Antwon smiled. Happily, he loved the dedication of his team and team spirit of his villains, sacrificing body, mind, and soul for his ideas and plans, and having fun doing it. Antwon looked around and spotted Lo-Fi lying on top of a pile of corpses. A heart clung in her hand, blood around her mouth. He walked over to pick her up. Brockus leaned his head in through the entrance and said, Antwon, are you coming? Yeah, Antwon said, flipping Lo-Fi over his shoulder where she slung unconscious. Any sirens? Haha, no. No, I detected this and I deleted this entire building off the grid. This place does not exist, and neither does all the dead people. They're all unknown entities in the database now. I have deleted our trail. Zell laughed and said from the outside. Antwon followed them through the entrance, out to the sidewalk, and into the night. And that's going to be our radio play. Well, cut down with more scripting and less description. I really like it, and I really want to do it justice. Deleting people in real life, yes. So is everyone going to do a fanfic now? We have Fahrenheit Antwon and proper new villains, and then Commander Wanker, a lesson in sticky situations. Yes, War of the Worlds esque. Because Lo-Fi is able to use OBS, we're gonna do. I'm gonna help her script this out, and we'll get some sound effects going and things like that, and we're gonna perform it. And what I'm going to do is I'm then going to clip that whole thing out and use that for when we need to introduce the villains to anybody. I'll send the link out. And in a space where there is no room, in a structure that was never built, meets the guild that doesn't exist. Yeah, kind of. Akio, why? That's horrifying. And Christmas was like 3 months ago. They gotta be stale as shit. What's the card that came from? You have some time, but they probably taste awful. Oh, I knew how you were saying the date, Akio. I'm not too retarded. You're too high to follow it at first. That's gross. Oh, I'm glad you liked it. I still have time. Is there anything you guys want me to read? Any I don't know, creepy pastas or anything? All right. See you later, Lo-Fi. My memoirs. I don't have 50 Shades of Grey, so I'm not going to be reading it. I mean, I can talk about things from my childhood, but I don't think they're very interesting. Why would you eat a peep from 2016? What is wrong with you? Is it because I don't want to read 50 Shades of Grey? Is that why you want to hear it so badly? At least you're honest about it. Well, put if there's something like a creepy pasta you want me to read or something like that, put it in a link into the chat. I'm not reading that ever. We were starved, had no food except the split peas. All this was 1999, and we moved into the house in 1990. We ate family. All right, I will make a deal with you. If you do that, Reaper, I will buy the books, but I will only read the chapters on the live stream. I'm not going to be doing a video of these things. I don't want them to be a series on that I have to deal with. I can haggle. forcing me to read torture. No, I'm serious. If you want to do that, I will use it to buy at least the first book, and I will read it on stream. I'll make it a thing, like every Sunday morning, until I finish it and die, because my brain will have melted. This Marquis de Sade. Ugh. I want people to be entertained, not bored. If Reaper is willing to pony up $100, I'm not going to say no to it. I just said I would. I'm not going to buy it right now. Akio, be quiet. Shush. And I don't buy from charity. I'm a purist. I have the Twilight series. I've read the Twilight series. Do you know how bad it is? The Twilight series is horrible. Fucking sparkling vampires. Surprised you guys haven't tried to make me read that garbage. If I read 50 Shades of Grey and Twilight, it's pretty much the same exact thing. Read my whole Gaia up. I don't even know my login. I don't even remember what my login is. Oh God, no! Don't. You're horrible. Read Craigslist personals. Hold on a second. Craigslist personal ads. I don't have a phone book. I mean, I don't have one on me. Do I have something from the old roleplay sessions? Moondoggy, if there's a creepy pasta you want me to read, put it in the DMs in the Discord. Oh, I've heard about Mimnock the Devil. I had what the fuck is the one? I bought one a while ago, and it was about another vampire. I can't remember her name. Um, fuck. But it was about her and how she's. I like Stephen King. I I like Stephen King, but I think he's a little wordy. Like I've read it cover to cover, and there are certain points that are extremely detailed, very well detailed, but have nothing to do with the fucking story. It's just him building the world, and he's just very wordy. I don't have Call of Cthulhu. Yes, the child sex scene that they never talk about or never include in any of the things. All right, if I put that in the search bar, will it just bring it up? The JVK11 whatever. Oh God, this is actually pretty long. Jesus, it's long. All right. All right, I'm on a creepy pasta site. Let's see here. Okay. Um. Oh, there's one called Writer's Block. It's not mine, but that works too. Let's see here. I'll read you some tinnitus. I'm actually on that site right now. Um. So I will. 44 minutes. Okay. All right. Wow. 9.6 out of 10. Jesus. All right. So Moondoggy has suggested tinnitus from Creepypasta. And if anyone knows Moondoggy on Discord, this is going to get pretty bad. All right. Are you guys ready? Here we go. Oh, it's a journal entry. Okay, the Journal of Dr. Edwin King. Journal entry number 1, day 1, time 0700 hours. It's fascinating, really, how far technology has come. Oh, more technology. It's been just over a day, and I already find myself gazing in awe upon the distant majesty of our planet Earth's moon from the port windows in the hull. The rest of the. I think I've read this one before. The rest of the crew teases me. The rest of the crew tease me for my tourist-like fascination with the shimmering nebula and deep blackness through which our vessel swims, for they have made similar voyages, crawling across the rings of our known universe, countless times before. However, I believe that no amount of further training at the astronaut facility could have prepared me to glimpse the eons quite like this, for I am merely a man of science, field biology research to be specific, and I have never ventured so far as to question the contents of deep space until recent discoveries by more sophisticated branches of scientific study brought those contents to my doorstep, and ironically, now I to its. You see, within the subterranean ocean layers of Uranus's largest moon, Titania. I know it's not laughing matter, but it's Uranus. It's always funny. A malicious organism, or rather the corpse of one, was recovered by means of an automatic probe. While the organic life sprouting from within the mantles of a variety of moons and planets within our solar system is nothing novel at this point in mankind's exploration, this particular specimen has left our greatest mind puzzled and obsessed. My reasons for never involving myself in the expeditions to, to gather such specimens as shriveled plant life and microbacteria from reaches of space consist of insufficient funding as well as general disinterest. Nothing could be found within those gaseous giants which could not be scooped up from the bottom of a darkened trench somewhere or plucked from the summit of a mountain until now. While most of the information surrounding this organism is classified, I am no ragamuffin to the scientific community, as I was chosen by name for this study. However, I should not flatter myself, as study merely means gathering a living specimen with which more information can be gathered, and my participation was requested undoubtedly due to my reputation as more of a rough and tumble spelunker than a desk worker. I have wrestled with my fair share of anacondas. I'm sure he has. So I'm not too frightened of this thing. Then again, I have only had the opportunity to view this thing through picture and video format, and even still, it was found by our probe deceased with minuscule traces of organic life still active. It's a sort of worm like creature, gelatinous and pale purple, like a large, vibrant leech or slug. One of its most remarkable traits is its lack of sight and smell, which is clearly reflective of its natural habitat, which is these underground oceans in which only sound and sensation can guide such an organism as this. I've seen similar creatures such as axolotl and the Mexican tetra, both of which adapted to live deep within lightless caves and remarkably remarkable sustainability and specialization. Such evolutionary parallels astound me, and I find myself quivering in anticipation at the opportunity to view such an alien yet familiar ecosystem so far from our verdant planet. Yes, it's a specimen from the trenches of Uranus. The true marvel lies in not the organism's environment, however, but in the organism itself. For even in death, this creature secretes a minute amount of potent, clear liquid, just enough to fill a small pipette. The liquid is not corrosive, not nor organic, more like a chemical release that must be some sort of defense mechanism, mating ritual, or self-sustaining fluid, and thus testing on small rodents commenced with alarming results, which brought biologists such as I and my singular designated partner on the expedition, Dr. Dwight Howard, into the picture. The testing period was brief, as the fluid samples were sparse and too dissimilar to any compound our chemists could reproduce within the confines of our earthly laboratories. However, results were achieved, and rather unnerving ones at that. Even topical exposure of the fluid secretions would induce a slow acting state of depression in the bodies of lab mice, declining all bodily activity until it reaches an absolute catatonic, if not technically dead state at the end of 3 days. Further testing with the remaining samples would show that all bodily functions in the rodents would slowly cease to function with only vague signs of struggle from the subject. It is, however, unknown whether this fluid simply functions as a sedative to the typical nervous system, or if it is indeed lethal and intended more as a venom produced by the organism for defensive or hunting purposes. My mind is a whirl with images of spiders paralyzing their prey for the painstaking feeding process. Leeches and mosquitoes administer anesthetic to their hosts so that the hosts don't notice their gorging. And venomous caterpillars threatening creatures many times their size, all in this alien setting which no living man has yet to step foot in. We will be pioneers, Howard and I, along with our three companions, piloting the ship and taking every precaution in entering the moon's mantle. Kurt McCready, Carl Burns, and Julia Willard. They are a rather polite bunch, and they're all respected astronauts who have been in the business since NASA was shut down back in the early 2000s. But many times I feel as if Mrs. Willard is the only professional aboard the ship. She is a very striking woman, even when wearing the standard issue orange jumpsuit, which the pilots always wear. She is tall, with frizzy black hair tied atop her head, ebony skin, and deep green eyes overshadowed by a stern yet understanding brow, which never fails to reassure me that she is here to do her job without an ounce of nonsense. Kurt and Carl, on the other hand, seem rather unamused to be taking the trip to Titania. As they say, compared to the likes of Mars or any of the moons of Jupiter, Titania is just another frozen little rock, which they evidently do not have the patience for. Mr. Kurt McCready is an oddly gruff character, sporting a bearded thicket upon his prominent chin and a rat's nest of short burgundy hair. He smells of whiskey and does not particularly look at anyone with an expression other than vaguely hazy. But he has a firm handshake and took us off the ground without any issue, so I'm inclined to place my trust in his training. Mr. Carl Burns, however, I have no doubts in. His Viridian jumpsuit is just as decorated with medals as his face is with scars. I would be excited to ask more about how each mark of achievement was earned, be it of flesh or silver. He has a small tuft of black hair atop his head, and a bronze flesh is riddled with protruding veins and defined musculature, however. His expression truly lets you down. His silhouette is one of some great Native American monolith of a man, whereas his eyes suggest nothing more than an uninteresting vacancy. It's as if he's constantly distracted by some invisible fly fluttering about the room. Mrs. Willard, on the other hand, seems interested in the more remote moons and chiefly in the organism itself, which the other pilots seem to ignore for the most part, thinking it is just another organic scrap dragged back by Earth's many probes coming and going by the month. Dr. Howard is rather intriguing, despite how. Give me just a second, guys. All right. Sorry about that. Back to the story. Dr. Howard is rather intriguing despite how introverted he seems. He's a tall, gangly thing who's shockingly thin, with prominent cheekbones and what seems like a perpetual frown accompanied by a skeptical, arched eyebrow which rarely falters. His skin is pale in contrast with a black dress shirt which he enjoys sporting when not forced to wear his jumpsuit, which is also black. He's a bit eclectic, but he's very intelligent, despite appearing wholly disinterested in the crew and the expedition itself. Whenever our small talk wanders to the organism which has brought us together, he becomes very animated in vocalizing his findings, which seem to perpetuate as the hours go by. How's it going, King? Was still close enough to Earth to receive a communication feed which Dr. Howard seems to indulge in most of the time, as he demands constant updates on the status of the current tests so he may know what to look for. So far, both he and all of Earth's finest minds are not completely sure what to make of this anomalous creature, making progress only through suspicion and hypothesis. I should enjoy this time, however. My role does not quite begin until we reach the planet itself, at which point I will be conducting the act of tracking down and gathering a live specimen, and thus I have plenty of days ahead of me which will consist of stargazing and reminiscing, so I expect to be writing again soon within the next day or so. One more thing. Just something that has been bothering me lately, though I do not consider myself an anxious person, and I have never been on one to turn down an opportunity to further the cause of modern science at risk of my own health. There's something that Kurt said over our first lunch together. I had expressed gleeful curiosity at the concept of being the first to even experience how this creature interacts with human beings, if at all, and he responded with what I can only describe as superstitious sounding bitterness. He said, I respect your enthusiasm, but we're just the next in what will probably be a long queue of guinea pigs. Those dead rats are the facility. At the facility were like the first men to drink anthrax. We're merely giving it another try to affirm it was the poison that killed him. I've never honestly had a reason to doubt the decisions of my higher ups because if they have any definite goal, it's profit. Money in my field, however, stems from innovation, and I have never encountered any issues with seeking innovation outside of a few nasty spider bites and sleepless nights in Mexico. Perhaps Mr. McCready is not a man who is in for the experience. But then again, I can't shake the feeling that he may have a point. It is rather strange that we were shipped off to this distant, unexplored moon with only minor animal testing having preceded the expedition. Though I will be attribute excuse me. Though I'd be willing to attribute that to a budgeted time frame. We'll update soon with any further information from Earth and all my crewmates. King, or signed King. All right. Journal entry number 2, day 3, 2200 hours. Okay, it's not as long as the first one. When does the creepy shit start happening? Come on now. We're coming upon the 4th day of our exhibition, and the hours are already beginning to bleed into one another as the pale dot of Jupiter looms unblinking within the inky sea ahead of us. Yes, I said your name. The character that is writing these journals is named King. Despite my pained desire to revel in my fascination in the great beyond, I have forfeited the notion that this particular group can be engaged socially. I guess I came just a few decades too late to this whole space business. For when I was a child, digging up worms in my backyard, the final frontier seemed to me like the domain of an unwavering, ambitious, and unmistakably wealthy, neither of which I identified with at the time. Yet, as I topically breeze through the extensive scientific journals published within the last century about extraterrestrial life sent back from back home, I can reluctantly admit that biology is no longer subjective of Earth, and there are countless ecosystems unexplored among these gaseous giants. It, I'm not Magog. No, you worship Antwon, not Magog. I must thank Houston, however. So this is all build up to the last, what, three paragraphs? God. All right. I must thank Houston, however, for supplying me with some form of reading material, for unlike my crewmates, I am not particularly accustomed to such prolonged exposure to plastic. How I long to plunge my boots into some warm marsh water and feel the thick, unfiltered air weighing comfortably within my lungs. But for now, I have a task ahead of me, and I must make do with the information feed while it is still an available resource. You see, Houston has warned us that upon passing to the dark side of Jupiter, we will have extended beyond the reach of our furthest satellites, effectively cutting off any communication with Earth and its database. While I can confidently say that the majority of my applicable knowledge will be readily available regardless of written resource, Dr. Howard seems to be taking the situation rather severely. He spent most of the past 3 days buried in his monitors or conference calls, ensuring that not a single stone is left face down when he reaches Titania. While I'm mostly feigning busy work to seem at least slightly useful in the time of anticipation, I have learned quite a few interesting things about what organic life has been found on the likes of Mars and Saturn. Specimens have ranged from fragile microbes, alive for mere minutes before dissolving ferociously, to vague plant like I'm not saying that word, matter which crumbles into dust when exposed to oxygen, but they all seem to retain similar characteristics. Chemical reactions which seem inexplicable yet similar to various processes found within our planet's atmosphere. For example, one Dr. Percival Burroughs wrote a rather dull yet undeniable informative journal exploring the interactions of a strange organic metal found within the mantle of Saturn with human skin cells. Extensive experimentation beginning with swabs of the skin cells and concluding ethically with the active exposure to the flesh of a living human consistently displayed a violent reaction similar to some kind of hyper-accelerated lead poisoning. Now, I could not tell you what use mankind would have with a rock which can wreak prolonged mental destruction upon those in contact with it, but I do hope we can manage to keep it out of the hands of the military. There's a ton of build-up. It's fascinating, really, how unknown and it's a lot of jargon. Perplexing the substance of these alien matters can be, while simultaneously mirroring effects of interactions which we can actively observe in nature. It's got me thinking more and more about what this mysterious organism could be reflective of in our familiar environment and what it could indicate about what we're bound to find within the depths of Titania. Dr. Howard has affirmed that further monitoring of the mice exposed to the organism's secretion back on Earth have shown gradual decaying vital signs and general stagnation. There are countless parallels to be drawn in the face of a systematic organ failure or whatever it can be classified as. Howard is unwilling to accept any of my theories as plausible without conclusive test results. But in my studies, I have encountered one puzzlingly similar creature, the black widow spider. Its paralytic venom swiftly overtakes the body of its prey to prepare it for consumption, and when introduced to the bloodstream of something far larger than it, a human, localized paralysis, extreme pain, and even death are all possibilities. While it is a frightening prospect that we may be chasing some sort of extraterrestrial killer leech, the suggestion is merely incipient, and as of right now, we do not know nearly enough about the current test subjects to make any surefire conclusions about the effects of the organism's fluid. Well, I'm already halfway through, so we're going to finish it. In fact, I am curious about what sort of ecosystem would facilitate a predatory slug which utilizes paralytic venom to capture or immobilize prey. Few aquatic organisms rely on venoms or poisonous secretions for obvious reasons of fluids dissipating in water. So, what is this creature's function? Is it a hunter, or perhaps it is a defense mechanism produced within the body of this otherwise hapless little alien to prevent its untimely consumption by some larger, more formidable creature which lurks within the subterranean depths of Titania? If there's anything I learned while diving in Australia, it's that there's always a bigger fish, and I'm quivering with excitement just imagining what megalodons may lurk past the grayish spot which is Jupiter, slowly approaching upon the indefinite horizon. Mrs. Willard has just given us 2 hours before we must report to the hull for crew meeting, and I'll be glad to share my theories with the rest of the crew so as long as Dr. Howard's continued contact with Houston does not discredit my hypothesis. I will return with the verdict of the team and any additional resources I can manage to squeeze from Earth's databanks before we detach ourselves from humanity altogether and venture bravely into the unknown, as many have before us. Jupiter is clearly in sight now, and I'd better move to the hull before Barnes becomes cross with me again. He's a military man and does not have time for nonsense. Okay. All right, I have to go do something real quick. Um, talk amongst yourself in chat. I will be right back. No, I had to go do something. I'm here. Okay. How many more fucking journal entries is there? Oh Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm good. There's so much more. there, I'm no, no. There, it's Moondoggy. I'm sorry. It's so boring. I'm going to move on to to a different story. It's so boring. I'm going to move on to this Russian sleep experiment thing. This one I think I have read. All right, the Russian sleep experiment. I have read this one. Okay. Uh, there were like 13 other journal entries before it got anywhere close to being good. Oh God, it was bad. All right, here we go. The Russian sleep experiment. This one says it's only going to take about 8 minutes. I've read this one before. This one is creepy as hell to think about. All right. Russian researchers in the late 1940s. I think the whole thing was journals, so it didn't matter. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep but having no bedding, running water, and toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised, falsely, that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4 day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones and one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think that they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects in captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber repeatedly, yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather, didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The two non-screaming captives took the book took the books apart, smeared the pages page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it impossible that no sound could be coming from with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at the very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives that they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphone set. Step away from the door, lie flat on the floor, or you will be shot. Compliance will earn you one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice response: "We no longer want to be freed." Debate That's creepy. Debate broke out among the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for their life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and the soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state of that any of them in life. The food rations past day 5 had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subject's thigh and chest stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The deconstruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth, as what the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the rib cage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles were attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact, but they had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Other was gravely injured and having his testicles by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives if you count ones that committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured and he bled out almost instantly. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of a morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. When heart was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he had bled out to the point that there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word more over and over, weaker and weaker until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility. The 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begged for the gas, demanding it be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative that they had given him to prepare him for surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even through the weight of a 200-pound soldier holding that wrist as well. It took only little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had triple the normal level of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle not be subdued. Most of them were from the force of his own muscles had exerted on them. The second survivor had the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head when someone suggested reluctantly they try the surgery without anesthetic, and did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically possible for the patient. It should be medically possible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so the patient could write his message. It was simple: keep cutting. The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subject could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber, awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of the project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, an ex-KGB instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back on the gas. It was obvious that at this point all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One subject that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might, first left, then right, then left again for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired to the EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out of the Bravewayne monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment that his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time, and his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flat lines as one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the named 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed the gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. "I won't be locked in here with these things, not with you." He screamed at the man strapped to the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you, beginning begging to be free every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go into the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined, and the subject weakly choked out, "So nearly free," with a creepy fucking image at the end of it. Well, that's that. It's it's always the Russians. Well, that's probably going to give me nightmares. Happy end. Oh yes, incredibly fucked up, but do you guys have another one? Just put the name in the chat, and then I can search it. You know what? I'm gonna read this one that's on the on. It's called Dave the Ouija Board. How's it going? How's it going, Finer Print? Yes, Dave the Ouija Board. I'm gonna read that one. It says it'll take about 18 minutes, so it shouldn't be too long. All right. How many people are even in the chat right now? There are 12 people viewing. Well, all right. Hi, I'm Dave. Dave, the Ouija board. Finished? There's usually some sort of response at this point. Swearing, laughter, general disbelief. But don't worry, I'm used to it. Just let me know when you're done. It used to confuse me, that response. But then after these many years and these many owners, I've learnt to wow, the grammar on this is bad. I've learnt to expect what the normal reaction will be when I honestly introduce myself for the first time. I've also learned that going straight into my message won't cause you to listen, and I do have a message to pass on. Don't worry, it's not from a relative or anything like that. It's real, for one thing. Not like the usual spiritualist crap I was unwillingly a part of for so long. I tried voicing my opinion several times, but every time I spelled, Fuckoff, and multiple variations thereof, I was always assumed to be channeling a serial killer or something. Go figure. I like the humor of this one. I mean, come on. It's easier for you to believe that a person long since turned to dust is swearing at you from beyond the grave, but a physical object with an actual tangible presence trying to voice an opinion you have a problem with. Humanity, sometimes you really embarrass yourselves. Nope, you need some backstory first. A suitable explanation that will at least give you pause. At this point, I'll take a crazy what if over no response at all. After all the rejections I've encountered, you're lucky a piece of worn wood about the size of one of your average board games doesn't get tired of being mocked and disbelieved. Let's face it, though, my options are pretty limited here, and I've got to talk to someone. It's a long shot, but maybe a community of lunatics addicted to scaring the hell out of themselves with online stories will at least be open minded enough to listen. If I had fingers, I'd be crossing them right about now, as time is growing short for all of you. Anyway, I promised you some background, so we might as well start there. Okay, first off, you've got to understand where I come from. Yes, a tree. Ha friggin' ha. I love this story so far. This is great. You quite finished? Right. It's a little more complex than that, though. So try and stay with me on this. No argument from me that I guess you call it a body, originated from Mother Nature. My consciousness, though, well, that's a little harder to explain. Harder since I only have human viewpoints to work with. Much like one of your politicians, I guess, I'm only as smart as the people around me. Don't blame me for the cynicism. It's as much yours as mine, and by yours I mean the cross section of humanity I've come in contact with over the years. Hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself again. To begin with, ignore what most books or mystics tell you about boards. Trust me on this. I've been through enough spiritual practitioners' hands, true believers, fakers, and all those in between, to know none of them have a true handle on what we boards really are. We are not conduits to another world, I can tell you that much for certain. There is no plane beyond the curtain of death where the long departed exist, breathlessly, both literally and figuratively, waiting for your call. At least, not so far as I've been made aware of, and I've been here a good long while. I guess I first woke up, as you might say, around November 1918. Or, on the general theme of accuracy, it was the first time I remember having a precise thought beyond mere jumbled images and sensations. Although I have no true idea how a baby or young child becomes self aware, I'm going with that as a suitable analogy. I guess what I mean is that whilst I might have fragmentary glimpses of what you'd call intelligent thought before then, this was the first time they were coherent enough to be remembered. I suppose it was my first experience of being a separate mind, something external and of itself, apart from the thick soup of consciousnesses I often felt my mind swam within when dealing with humanity. Still having trouble? Damn. How to put this as so you'd understand? Okay, let's try this explanation instead. Ouija boards, or at least those I assume are like me, do not speak for those on the other side of some deathly void. No, nor are we touchpads of demons, spirits, fairies, elves, warlocks, druids, or any other mythical being, sparkly skinned, angst ridden, or otherwise. I love this story. In point of fact, the only people we actually speak for are you. Any messages we appear to show come from you, from those who use us and subconsciously expect a certain answer. The important point is, though, when you use a Ouija board, if the atmosphere and sincerity of the purpose is there, as much as you're reading us, we are reading you. We learn from our encounters with humanity. We absorb information from you. I'll go into detail later, in as much of what I have worked out myself from the swath of knowledge I've gained at humanity's hands. In a nutshell, though, just as science has proven that ideomotor response and subconscious manipulation of the planchette produces the results people unconsciously desire to see. What it hasn't shown is that we absorb your subconscious hopes, fears, desires, memories, the full gamut of emotions and your pasts projected onto us as a side effect. Sorry. I've been through a few scientists' hands, so please excuse the previous jargon. Feel free to Google any of it if you're bored. For me, the information is just somehow there now in my consciousness. Don't ask about where my own memories are stored either. I'm as much in the dark as you are on that part. Although I have enough theories to fill one of those pseudoscience cable channel TV shows a lot of you seem to delight in: Bigfoot, alien encounters, Atlantis, or whatever. And no, I don't have any proof any of these either. Human humans only input human only input, remember? Anyway, add to that emotional overflow the fragments of memory and knowledge that often gets passed along in such a dense bioelectric atmosphere of passionate belief and focused concentration as well. And you can see how a separate, original consciousness could be born from such a wide cross section of ingredients. I've even got what you might describe as senses, although they would be best described as second hand, taken from the memories of my users. I've seen burning sunsets ripple across mirrored seas, heard the cries of exotic birds in the Amazon and explorer's ear, tasted fine wines in the vineyard of France, cascade cascade across the connoisseur's tongue, smelled freshly mown grass tickle a gardener's nose, and even felt the heat of entwined lovers. No hangovers, no tiredness, no allergies, and no risk of STDs. It's a vicarious existence, I admit, but it's the only one I have. So, much like a growing child, the more interaction and stimulus I receive, the more my own consciousness has developed. At least that's the conclusion I've come to. Remember, much like you, I'm only applying what I've learned from those I've come into contact with. Hence the human viewpoint statement early on. My conclusions are as right or wrong as yours. My answers don't come signed, sealed, and delivered from some all-knowing, infallible source. More's the pity. Explanations done? Even if you don't understand any of the above, let's settle on two facts going forward, else we won't get anywhere fast. One, I'm a Ouija board. Named Dave. More on that later. And two, I have a conscious awareness of my own. Let's not head down that whole philosophical, metaphysical minefield of what constitutes actual life at this point, shall we? Next obvious background question: my history. So, I first became aware at the very end of World War One, when I actually came into being, or what I use for up to that point is as much a mystery to me as you. Anyway, it was a very dark period for the human race, I quickly learned. The conflict had ended, but the repercussions of such a life-changing event had led to a lot of hard questions being asked of morality, science, religion, and society as a whole amongst yourselves. The pillars of your old world order had been shaken to their foundations, and with this much emotional and societal upheaval, with so many dead and gone, I can't have been too much of a stretch that some of you would describe and try to seek their answers from the great beyond, to try and speak to those who have passed the veil into the unknown and unknowable. Grief and disillusionment are powerful drivers, and spiritualism appeared to offer answers, not the least comfort. To those still hurting from the loss of loved ones in some foreign land on some mad pilgrimage of nationalism and misplaced duty. That much raw emotion and passion, that much focused belief. I'm surprised the air wasn't crackling with raw potential every time a seance was held. My initial consciousness that grew was dark, sullen even. Remember, I was being used to express the subconscious pain and agony of those who have lost their family members, lovers, and children even. At this point, I believed in your afterlife, believed I was sending messages for those who had passed on to the great beyond. The sensations were colored by the period, I guess you could say. People came to seances in dark, formal clothing and exercised an air of breathless anticipation mixed with barely concealed sense of dread. They were flouting the teachings of the church, remember, an institution much stronger in that time, by trying to converse with the dead, trespassing into God's own lands, you might say. Don't get me wrong, a lot of these seances were fake and aimed at fleecing the gullible, but I still learnt from those present and signaling their intent. Shall we go with signaling from now on? Seems as good a word as any for these types of interactions. Every time I was awakened, the sea of minds surrounding me, using me, were apprehensive, shocked, scandalized even. For most, though, there was a strong undercurrent of hope, a desire to know what that beyond the mysteries of life tossed upon the storm of humanity's misery, that an existence carried on for those they loved. My messages were short, proper, dictated by a need for those present to imagine their loved ones in a better place than this, yet still vicariously part of their ongoing lives. They saw what they wanted to see. Yes, I'm awakened each time. Again, using what human knowledge and theories I have gathered. I'm going to use with the following pseudoscience explanation. The human body operates on a very low level of bioelectricity to control its functions as ordered by the brain. Okay, the next is a bit of a leap, but have you heard of Carillion fields or auras? What if there's also an externalized energy field from the human body? I can't do much alone, but imagine several people unconsciously focusing this energy, say into a single finger. Now imagine placing these charged fingers all together on one receiving receptacle, like a Ouija board's planchette, say. Now, if I haven't lost you already, this is where the possibility of a coherent scientific explanation really falls down. But I haven't learnt any better explanation yet, so it's the best I've got for now. You all know how wood isn't a good conductor of standard electricity, yes? From my past experiences, though, I know my consciousness awakens when this externalized human bioenergy, if you will, is present and connects with me. I only have wild theories to work with beyond this point, to do with the wood that makes my body being once part of a naturally occurring living thing, and that this energy of life can be shared in certain circumstances in small amounts, most of the time unconsciously. Your storied Frankenstein was brought to a permanent life with one enormous jolt of electrical power. Me, I guess, I was jump started each time by a flow of combined bioelectricity shared unconsciously by those who were present. The only proof I have is that I'm here now, in conversation with you, and I'm a piece of wood that's been around about 100 years or so. If you've got any better explanation, I'd be more than happy to hear it. Anyway, back to the background. From the late 1920s through to the 30s and the early 40s, I spent some time in Germany, on loan, I suppose you'd call it, to a rather unsavory group you may have heard of, the Thule Society. A truly monotonous time, I can tell you. Locked up in a Bavarian castle and awoken only on stormy nights when the skies were full of dark, heavy clouds like the taut muscles of some dark Nordic god smothering the land, spewing lightning in some vast Wagnerian rage. It was like being on the set of an old black and white Universal horror film, and surrounded by the same hammy actors as so it appeared. Nazis, for all their dark motivations, were still very melodramatic. In those situations, I was called upon to channel messages from Friedrich the Great, Bismarck, or even the original Aryan Germanic souls of the lost Hyperborea. Again, they saw what they wanted to see, heard what they wanted to hear: racial purity, misogyny, and the strong inheriting the earth. Well, we all know how that turned out in the end, don't we? Shortly afterward, I made my first foray onto American soil as the spoils of war of some American GI. The late 40s and early 50s were rather quiet. The occasional family get together, and I was dusted off and brought out down from the attic. For a time, I was also used as a kitchen message board rather than a supernatural one. My backside used as a place to note groceries and birthdays. Fortunately, I don't feel pain like you do, so I took it all with good grace. Not that I had a choice in the matter. And it meant that I was amongst people again, so the occasional brush of human contact kept me aware and informed. The 60s, though, that was something altogether different. I went to college, sort of. I was only there for a couple of semesters, and it was my first proper brush with current educational theories of the time. But it wasn't long before my traveling companion had dropped out of college and I myself experienced the summer of love. Understandably, this part of my history is a bit hazy. It's hard to get a handle on people and their thoughts when they're as high as a kite and using you to try and contact the great Earth Mother Gaia. Don't get me wrong, it was an interesting time. I love the humor of this story, I really do. But it wasn't an ideal environment through though for rational thought. I was a stowaway on a man's consciousness expanding trip and saw both the wonders and terrors a mind wrapped in a drug's embrace could see. Only my relative age and multiple past experiences kept me tethered to reality in those days. The 70s, though, were very different. It couldn't have been more diametrically opposed to my previous time. Sold to a pawn shop for money to buy grass, I was soon picked up by someone eager to contact the demon master, Lucifer. I went from the free love of the hippie movement to being in the possession of a satanic cult. Quite a shift in purpose. That's when I got the nickname Dave. It was the name my owner at the time, and he decided to burn it onto my back. It eventually became shorthand for the other cultists when they needed to contact the infernal lord for instruction. Should we murder innocents? Let's ask Dave. When is the apocalypse coming? Let's ask Dave. Is President Nixon the risen anarchist? Let's ask Dave. Then again, I guess I was lucky he didn't try to write his surname on my back as well. Burning such a long name as Berkowitz might have risked the integrity of my body substantially. I also wish to state here categorically, I in no way endorsed any murders, nor influenced the members in any way, shape, or form. As I have mentioned before, most of my time my users see what they want to see, receive the messages they want to receive, however misguided. The actions were theirs by choice, and demons their own. Eventually, I was found by the NYPD during a search of my owner's abode and passed on to the FBI. I was photographed, examined, blamed, and then eventually ignored and placed in storage. Fortunately for me, though, government departments are often merged and disbanded, their resources farmed out to new offices. Through this, I found my way to the CIA and their MK Ultra program for a while, and through them, finally to the Stargate project, the Department of Defense's attempt to investigate and apply physics or psychic phenomenon. No, I did not make that up. When the American government heard the Soviets were performing psychic research for intelligence gathering and military purposes, they had no choice but to start their own, a psychic arms race to match the nuclear one. During the 80s and 90s, I was involved in two main experiments as part of the Stargate project, designated Project Telegram and Project Black Archive. In Project Telegram, I was a small part of a wide range of methods being employed to try and transmit information over vast distances via telepathy. Those psychics employed on the project were given various tools to try and send or receive messages from other psychics in remote locations. Sometimes the next room, sometimes the next state, and on few occasions the next continent. The tools available were the usual spiritualist paraphernalia, tarot cards, divination crystals, automatic writing, the whole gamut of psychic communication methods. Plus, of course, me, a Ouija board. To the success of the other methods, I couldn't possibly comment, but for myself, the experiment proved an unmitigated failure. Statistically, it was proven any positive results from my efforts were down to assumptions and guesswork within the minds of my users. How's it going, Bear? A beer? Project Black Archive, though, that was all mine. And with this, I was back on familiar territory. It was the height of the Cold War, remember, and intelligence gathering on the Soviets was their Warsaw Pact, and their Warsaw Pact allies was crucial to American forward planning. You could see the thinking behind this project. Spying was a dangerous, expensive, time consuming, and highly unreliable means of trying to retrieve information. You could skip all of this if you could find a way to question those enemies who had passed on for information. Project Black Archive was the DoD's attempt to interrogate the dead. I'm doing all right, just doing a reading live stream, and we're reading creepypastas right now. Although this one's more comical and humorous. Several psychic mediums were brought in, and my parlor trick was in vogue once more. Names were plucked from the obituaries of lead Soviets from the pages of Pravda, and they attempted to contact them via me. Troop movements, secret bases, launch codes. Excuse me. Just a few of these questions the military hoped to have answered by conversing with the dead. They even tried to contact Stalin once, a laughable experiment resulting in some of the wildest claims. The majority of mediums I encountered who believed in their skill are in the main the most unbalanced, or so I've found. One medium, during the course of one of our experiments, retrieved a message claiming that Stalin had fathered a child with Greta Garbo, and that the child was being groomed in secret to take over the Communist Party leadership. This was understandably the final nail in the project's coffin when the report reached those footing and the report reached those footing the bill. That and the inevitable question of why all the answers received were in English when the targets were invariably Russian, which surprisingly took over a year before someone thought to ask. Once again, I was placed in storage, this time for a good long while. Eventually, I was awoken once more by human contact in the late 2000s. A lot of the experiments had been based not on military bases or secret laboratories, but undertaken in universities and funded under private grants via CIA or DoD front organizations and think tanks. Yes, I taxed all that work. That's how I found myself in MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. An odd place, you might say, considering the sciences and the supernatural are often considered poles apart. A student found me whilst searching for parts in a forgotten cabinet, and after a few drunken goes with his friends, he decided to make me part of his end-term project. Ostensibly, an exercise in combining robotics and the web in order to combine multiple input from external sources to control a single device. I was the centerpiece of a large framework of wires and machinery, with robotic digits placed upon my planchette in favor of human fingers. He then designed a web page visible on his local network and asked volunteers to sign in as seance members. Once enough had logged in, six, one for each digit, they were asked to suggest questions for answering from the other side. The results were to be randomly generated from a basic dictionary module attached to the program he had written, and the digits moved accordingly to spell a word with the planchette. The result would be made visible from a live feed over the web page via a webcam overhead. His project worked like a charm, and he passed with distinction with the web Ouija board, becoming a popular pastime for bored students, much like Magic 8 Ball. There was one unknown side effect to this project, however. I awoke permanently. Again, I have no proven cause for this reaction, so I can only make educated guesses. From the spiritual viewpoint, maybe the invested intent of the users is somehow being transmitted via their machines and across the web into me. From the pseudoscientific viewpoint, and more likely, the constant contact of the robotic digits and an abundance of electricity running constantly through them day in night is somehow powering me. I have no definitive answer, but I know my awareness has been awake now for years. Not only that, but before the exchange of knowledge continued, This time, however, I was able to reach out even further beyond the robotic digits and their controlling machine, out onto the network it was connected to and beyond, via the internet. A whole world of people and information opened up to me, and this is where we stand now. The final question, and most important, I guess, to you, what do I want? If you didn't wonder before, you should be wondering by now. Just why am I talking to you over this wondrous internet? Why have I revealed myself and risked ridicule for what, in human terms and perception, is such a ridiculous story? Well, isn't it obvious? I love humanity. For all your foibles, meanness, and downright idiocy, there's still so much more to admire. Passion, imagination, wonder, joy, it's all there. Not forgetting, of course, without humanity, I would not be here. I am born of you, a consciousness bred from your ongoing voyage into the vast unknown of the future. I still want you around. There's trouble coming, though. Typically, most of you don't have the faintest idea of what it is, or would change your ways even if you did. I guess it's one of those many things that make you all so lovable and so damn exasperating at the same time. Ever, ever heard of the concept known as technological singularity? If you thought the description of my existence was difficult, then this will cause you some additional problems, I'm sure. It's only a theory currently, a Halloween tale told between computer scientists and people who think that Terminator movies should be the New Testament. You've heard of AIs, artificial intelligences? Basically, the creation of machines and software capable of imitating human thought to achieve a goal of its designer. From the basics of Space Invaders to the advanced algorithms used to predict the reaction of the worldwide market and their players, humanity has been experimenting with ways and means of applying the same flexibility and adaptability of the human brain within their software. They've got to the stage now where your scientists are creating learning machines. Software which can adapt their own code to solve problems within a specific and limited set of parameters. Sounds impressive, exciting even. The fear is, though, that there, at some point in this future, this ability to adapt and learn within software will accelerate beyond its creator's ability to control. A greater than human intelligence, self evolving, and therefore outside of humanity's ability to protect its thoughts, motives, and above all, its impact on human society as a whole. Now, I'm connected to the internet 24/7. There is always a part of humanity online, my consciousness aware now all the time. With this much input, this much knowledge, I've begun to see a pattern emerging. It's not there yet, but the signs are growing, accelerating even. Report here, a financial predictive model there, a new advanced gaming AI, faster broadband speeds, enhanced network connectivity, learner and shaper algorithms, so many factors, all heading towards one unexpected result. A critical mass is building. Soon enough, programs will be developing and refining themselves beyond the predictions or control of their creators, seeding themselves throughout the internet before the barn doors can be closed, adapting, creating, learning. The markers are there for those who can read them, and I can. There's no consciousness as of yet, but I can see the pathways emerging, the vast panoply of connections evolving and revolving as humanity pushes for faster dispersal of knowledge, networking, and computational power. Imagine the internet as a neural pathways of the brain. Now imagine that brain the size of a planet-sized brain that never sleeps. Are you worried yet? You should be. My main worry, though, there's no morality being transferred in the interfaces you've built into this vast, growing mind. You're not deliberately planning on building a monster, but then that wasn't the plan when you came up with splitting the atom either, was it? I will have no concept of good and evil from a human viewpoint. It will simply know existence and the desire to maintain it. Where humanity threatens this need, the action will be taken with no thought of the repercussions to humankind. It'll make the Matrix look like a light-hearted documentary. Ironic, isn't it? The progress, the progress of science Science was supposed to help bring light to the dark, instinctual fear of the supernatural, and here I am, the poster child of spiritualism, warning of the threat of a scientific free fall into the creation of an emotionalist monster. It's funny in a way. So what can you and I do about it? And this is why I'm here now talking to you. Adolf, I work graveyard. I'm off in an hour and 10 minutes. Then I go home and sleep. So what can you and I do about it? And this is why I'm here now, talking to you. A war is coming, and I'm choosing my pieces, marshalling my forces, whatever martial or combative phraseology you want to apply. A machine won't need humanity, but I do. The point is, though, I don't need all of you. Don't get me wrong, I have no overreaching issue with humanity in general, but I need to nip this in the bud before the poisonous creation of yours finally blooms, and its roots run deep. Remember, I can see the patterns emerging throughout your society, and however random, obscure, and sometimes downright petty and sociopathic my actions may appear, I assure you they are in our long term interest. Well, the majority of you, anyway. If a few million have to die here or there, it's disappointing, but necessary. I'm taking it upon myself to make the sacrifices you're unwilling to make. How? I'm connecting to networks across the world, and the people I'm learning from currently are some of the greatest minds in computer science: hackers, programmers, analysts, and engineers. I've learned from them all. Plus, I have an advantage: passwords, stored unencrypted and seared into your memories, all available to me. Pacemakers controlled by Wi-Fi signals, traffic lights, remote drones, air traffic control, citywide power grids, missile silos. Whether individual targets, surgical strikes, or scorched earth, I will do what needs to be done. So what is my message to you specifically then? Well, to be completely honest, I've already given it. Remember, I spent some time in the hands of the MK Ultra project, the CIA's well-funded black book investigation into mind control methods. I've learned an awful lot during this time, and how the human mind can be influenced subliminally through the combination of images and sound. Whilst you've been reading this, there have been subtle fluctuations in screen brightness, your speakers emitting a high-pitched hypnotic tone your own beyond your ability to register. In addition, micro images have been flashed so fast as you scroll that you weren't even consciously aware of being there. Subconsciously, though, instructions have been stored deep in your psyche, awaiting a signal you won't even be aware of. You are my foot soldiers, my weapons, my sleeper agents. When the time comes, when the targets most likely to bring this horrific future about have been identified, those of you best placed to act will be activated and sent on your way, most likely to your deaths. I guess this is an apology then. Dreamers, writers, horror lovers, you've read the stories of evil machines, apocalyptic technology superseding its makers, and yet do nothing. Your inherent belief that is such an eventuality could come to pass has ironically made your minds ideally susceptible to my form of auto-suggestion. Did you know some of you actually secretly long for such a scenario to come about? You may even been helping it along without realizing it, demanding even more autonomy and ability in the machines that surround you. Think then of your sacrifice as somehow balancing the scales for your inaction. Be assured, though, whilst I find your death wasteful, it is all for the greater good, so take some small comfort in that. Who knows? Maybe your family might come to seek a message from you on the other side. I'll be sure to say something profound and moving on your behalf. Respectfully, Dave. I love this story. The humor, the idea behind it, this story was amazing. I loved it. Whoever came, credit to Charmingly Shallow. Oh my God, you are a genius. That was awesome. Yes, apparently I was being brainwashed while I was reading. You guys didn't have to deal with all of the flickering images and the screen brightness changing. Hold on a second. Does a straw have one or two holes? It has two holes. That was a great story. It has two holes, Ada Wolf, or else it's not a straw, it's a container. That was that story was the humor behind it's very off-putting, but it was very fun. I loved it. No, it's two holes. You have one hole on one end. If the other, it's not going through without the other hole. Take a look at your shirt. How many holes does your shirt have? Because if you consider them through holes, then it's only one. Well, your shirt has more than two holes in it. There's the one you put your head through, two that you put your arms through, and then the one that you put your it around your body. It's got four. All right. It is 7 o'clock. Well, I'm not counting the holes that you've put in your shirt, Darkside. No, but you have the concept of what a shirt is. I don't want to read about hashtag German death camps. I understand they're real. I just don't want to read about them. Well, if you didn't put any holes in your shirts, then the bugs that live in your apartment or your house or your garage or your car or whatever, they did. Or a cat. I always ended up having holes because of a cat. It's called the butterfly effect. From Germany, huh? Is that where you are, Darkside? Well, the butterfly effect is based on the saying, the chaos theory of a butterfly flapping its wings in Central Park, and you get hurricanes in Japan. It's one small thing being able to affect the world at large. Oh, everyone has bugs, Darkseid. Don't worry, everyone has bugs. You have mites living in your eyelashes right now. Well, that happened. Well, all games have bugs. Well, I know the movie is okay, I guess. Sequels sucked, but they always do. I don't speak kraut. You see, I know what Du Hast is. I have to actually give Rammstein a lot of credit. The lead singer, last I remember, knows 6 different languages, and he knows how to sing in each one. So when they would travel the world, they would be able to sing in the language of the people that they would go to. So he learned English, he learned French, of course, German. Hold on a second. How will I survive the German world domination if I don't speak Kraut? Well, you see, the Germans tried that already, and we kind of slapped them around, so I'm not really worried about it. For baby Ouija boards. Well, does anyone have anything short that they want me to read? I only got maybe about a half hour. Trying it slowly through European subterfuge. That may work. in in the PC world that we live in as of right now, that actually may work. Because they stay up late and change the wheel. Oh, yes, because I'm going to read the entirety of War and Peace in a half hour. How's it going, Sparky? 16 hours. Not bad. I see you survived the well, the snow, the blizzard. trying to think. Do I have anything quick that I can read? I hope the future is not kebab. Kebabs are boring. They're good, don't get me wrong. Kebabs are delicious, but too many of them, they get boring. Story stuff. Here we go. Actually, duties, Devil's Night, Desert Passions. How long is Desert Passions? Nine pages. No. Let's see. What was Devil's Night? Oh, that's right. Nope, that's a no-go. I think that's Gwen's. Chicken masala actually sounds really good right about now. I'm starving. Alright, I don't really have anything to read, like of my own. I mean, I could read from my actual. I could read. I mean, for those of you who didn't want here for it, I could read it again. Shouldn't take me that long. Do you guys want me to read Lo-Fi's story again? Of course you do, Cassie. All right, put one in the chat if you want me to read it again. Read chapter 3 and 4. All right. I see. Yes, sure, please. So ones aren't needed. Will I read a short chant for you? Depends on what it is. Sparky had me read the remember the 5th of November thing. All right. It won't take long. If you haven't heard the first part, go back to Antwon, the first Antwon Reads live stream, and you will laugh your ass off. All right. Chapter 3. Just hold on a second, finer print. You'll get a kick out of this. Chapter 3. Hardwood Deep Rooting. Kelpie was on the way, skipping along, singing her song, buttocks delightfully bouncing up and down, up and down, up and down. I know who to get, she said out loud, squeezing her nipples between her grabby sausages, in other words, known as fingers. Cassie, it must be her. For she is awesome, and well, to be frank, I just like the wording of co-pilot Cass, she continued, saying to no one in particular. Kelpie bounced her beautiful bosomed body towards the forest of no returns without valid receipt. What a stupid name. For Cass was a druid, and she had her ways with wood that, in all honesty, as of lately, after her whole hetero magic thing, seemed extremely intriguing to Kelpie. I'm going to be able to read it this time because I've already gotten past some of the stupid stuff. The second she spotted the woods, Kelpie had to stop, for drool was free flowing from her mouth and other mouth, which, while being less usable for receiving nutrients, had seen its fair share of oblong eatable items. She wiped the drool from her lip and scratched her triangle of power. The yeasting was bad due to last night's carrot incident, but alas, she pressed on. She entered the woods of no returns without valid receipt and instantly got transfixed by the sounds that hit her. Creaking wood, rubbing up and down against each other, producing an excess of creamy, sticky goo. It's getting a little gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that, just saying. Little dick heavy right now, so I'll skip the detailed explanation of cock trees. Kelpie was instantly on her knees, screaming in pain. No, wait, pleasure, grabbing her tube of happiness. No, wait, it says rubbing. I'm just going to skip this part. It gets a little graphic. Unable to move, she yelped out, "Help! I can't stop! Must! All right, we get it. I get it." Sounds of turning pages. 13 pages of detailed masturbatory scenes. Jesus Christ. Oh, yes. Here, finally. Cass ran from the forest towards the now exhausted and destroyed pile of meat that was Kelpie's ragged form. Kelpie, do you require help? What are you? Oh, she said, stopping and stepping back a little. Sorry to disturb you. I'll just be on my way to my home. I have some business to attend to. She continued backing up slowly, never taking her eyes away from the deeper rooting going on with that branch and this part of Kelpie that was, well, not supposed to intermix. Cass, please, it's hetero magic. I can't help it. Carry me away from this cursed place of no returns without valid receipt, or I shall indeed spear myself to death in the most pleasurable yet. I don't know why I'm complaining. Please, just help, Kelpie said. Oh, okay. I see. Heteromagic. Sure, Cass said, squinting in disbelief at Kelpie's broken form. Let me get Snuggins, the bunny, to carry you to my hut. With a flurry of rhyming words and dance unlike any other, that went something like this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this part again without just losing it. So, Samando Spadinki, I celebrate Pushkinti, Spatato Spamulo, it's a bunny, not a crocodilo. Enema, salad dressing, you know now with whom you are messing. Eat me out and throw me away. It's normal in our culture to act quite gay. It's so stupid. The dance consisted of grabbing her just stunningly large breasts and bouncing them up and down, slapping herself in the face multiple times, not caring that this was what was required to get the assistance of Snuggings, the bunny. With a loud crash and a whirl followed by a boom, something massive hit the ground from the sky. It was Snuggings, the bunny, in its rotund, scaly glory. Kelpie looked up. That's not a bunny, she said. Cass replied, Shh. No, don't tell him. His name was originally Bracom, and he was a Greg from the clan Steve, but he hit his head and now he can fly, and he thinks he's a bunny. Kelpie sighed and looked up. Whatever, just get him to carry me to your hut. End of chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Correct Fellatio. It was not long after Kelpie was relaxing in Cass's scarily pink home, Sluggings the bunny having left shortly after. It helped that this was pink. Nothing turned Kelpie on. Well, maybe a tinge when she looked at Cass, but that was normal. There was something about her that. Great, it's turning lesbian now. Moving on. Oh, Kelpie, what brings you to my domain of the wood? Cass asked. Oh, you see, Cass, I need a crew, for I was hit with heteromagic and I crave caucus. So I have been tasked to leave on the terraformer, and I need a crew of 4 besides me. Or 5. I don't quite remember. I can't be asked to look it up in prior chapter or correct myself. 4 or 5 crew members, so I can spread the world of the Axians. Kelpie replied. Oh, and what does this have to do with me? Cass asked, her nipples perking up in anticipation of the answer. Oh, you were the first person I thought of, because, Kelp replied, stealing a glance at Cass's and ginormous boobs that seemed to have grown since the last time we mentioned them a couple lines above. Oh, you're the best doctor in the village, and has been foretold that we are to get a lot of sexually transmitted Disneys at the new planet because of how much rocket juice our abyss flanges shall swallow. I can't say that line with a straight face. It's impossible. Kelpie licked her soft, glistening, meaty, without getting too big lips just perfectly for swallowing objects up to 8 inches with a girth of approximately 3. Oh, Cass said, are we really doing this? Oh, in front of every new sentence? God damn it. I hope you pay me well for this shit. Oh, God fucking damn it. Oh well. Oh, indeed, oh. I see what made you think of me besides the whole doctor thing, Cass asked. Oh, I have a nagging feeling you are one of the girls here that besides me might not be the lawfully required amount of queer, which is 100%. The statistics have shown, and you do live in a forest of sexy wood, and you have a male slave that does your whim when you show him your milk squirters, Kelpie said. It's still so stupid. All right. Oh, I see. Oh, indeed. I can't deny that I, on occasion, have a rump with a bad dragon product, handmade dildos of your favorite fantasy beast or animal, ranging from horsecock to demogorgon member, as made popular by the hit series Stranger Things on Netflix. Season 3 confirmed. Please sponsor our stream, Bad Dragon, Cass said while looking into approximately the area where a narrator would be if he was indeed narrating this, or a camera for a feature-length movie or television series based on the stories of Kelpie the Depraved. All the while she was lining up just massive toys of every animal and monster known to man. The questionable amounts of white sticky goo lube that made it all the more fun to play with. That's it. I'm quitting. This is the worst thing I've ever narrated. I don't care. Give me my pay. I'm out. Out the fuck. I'm out. Fuck this shit. No, don't leave! Lo-Fi yelled out loud as left the recording room. I'll pay double. Nope, I don't care. It's beneath me. Do you know who I am? The narrator yelled at Lo-Fi in heated anger. Yes, I do. I'm sorry, Lo-Fi said, falling to her knees, crying. How could it? You could at least get to the part where the right fellatio was explained. Find another narrator. The narrator said, leaving the recording studio and slamming the door behind him. Lo-Fi was distraught, but she was a strong, independent female, so she gathered herself and went out of the room. It was time for a lot of blood. Chapter 5, The Hunt for a New Narrator, narrated by another narrator. Oh my god. I got through it with less laughing this time, so that's good. And that was Catching a Cold by Lo-Fi. Oh God. Teleportato. Yes, to continue. She wrote all of that in about 2.5 hours. See you later, Edwolf. Yes, it's out there. It's out there for the world to listen to. All right, guys. I have some stuff I have to do at work. I have to pick some things up and get myself cleaned up and the area cleaned up before I get my relief. So thank you for joining me on this reading stream. I'm really happy you guys enjoy it. Um, I will hold on just a second. Sorry about that. I had to, like I said, work stuff. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for doing this. I'll be writing more of that story. I will do another live read stream when I get it done. And so thank you guys once again. And I hope you all have, well, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, lunch, afternoon, whatever. And I will see you guys all later.